My boyfriend of 4 months retaliated against me because I went out with my close friends until morning by calling me while he was having sex with his friends with benefits. Time has a tendency to curve around our feelings. Even though Brandon and I have only been dating for 4 months, the spectrum of emotions we have shared makes our time together feel both very short and shockingly lengthy. He studies architecture, while I study graphic design at VL University. We are both sophomores. Due to our mutual passion for design, we initially met in a freshman seminar. From the beginning, our talks were smooth and conversational, discussing our studies and aspirations for the future. We would frequently have coffee while surrounded by class models and sketches. In those early days, our relationship felt natural and easy. We spent many nights discussing our projects and ideas, which I always found enriching. Brandon's background was quite different from mine, particularly his strong Catholic faith and conservative views, which initially I found intriguing. He was upfront about his past and his values, including his limited experience with relationships, and his decision to mostly save himself for marriage. However, as we moved past the honeymoon phase of our relationship, I began to feel the weight of our differences more acutely. His traditional views, which I once admired, started to feel restrictive, especially around topics of intimacy and personal freedom. He had been very open about his conservative approach to relationships, but this openness sometimes made me uncomfortable and skeptical about how it would affect our relationship. Our first major challenge came when I committed to a major group project with my friends from the graphic design program. The project, named 50 Specimen Shapes, was an ambitious plan to create 3D models for various abstract shapes, combining artistic flair with scientific precision. As the deadline approached, my team decided to pull an all-nighter to finish our work. I was excited about the project and shared my plans with Brandon, hoping he would understand the commitment it required. Instead, his response was cooler than expected. He seemed uneasy, not just about the late night, but also about me being deeply involved in something outside of our relationship. His discomfort seemed to stem from his religious beliefs, which made him wary of the unpredictable nature of creative projects. His reaction left a coldness between us as I prepared for the night. There was a noticeable tension in his goodbye that evening, and even his hug felt forced. It made me wonder if our relationship, built on such different foundations, could really last. Despite this, I headed into the project night full of anticipation, but also concern, not realizing that the events of the evening would test our relationship even further. The day leading up to the planned all-nighter with my friends was a typical Thursday, marked by the usual rush of classes and the added buzz of creative energy that always seemed to spike as deadlines approached. I had spent most of the afternoon in the studio, putting the finishing touches on my part of the project, my mind racing with adjustments and improvements. The vibrant atmosphere was contagious, everyone throwing ideas back and forth, our workspace a testament to weeks of hard work and chaotic creativity. I checked my phone intermittently, noting the absence of any messages from Brandon. It was unusual, given that we often exchanged quick updates or words of encouragement throughout the day. Deciding to break the silence, I sent him a text, hoping to lighten his mood and possibly share some of my excitement. "Hey, busy day here but looking forward to tonight. Wish me luck," I typed, hoping the smiley face would bring a smile to his too. The reply came just as I was gathering my things to leave the studio for a quick dinner before the evening's marathon. "Good luck. We need to talk when you have a moment," the message read, void of any emojis that might hint at his mood. The brevity and tone of his text sent a small wave of anxiety through me. It was not what I had hoped to read, especially not today. Dinner was a rushed affair at a nearby cafe, where I sat alone with a sandwich and a cup of too strong coffee, mulling over Brandon's message. The cafe was cozy, a little nook that served as a frequent escape for me from the campus hustle. Today, however, the warmth of the cafe did little to ease the chill that had settled inside me. Returning to my apartment briefly, I found Brandon waiting for me, his figure slouched against the doorway of our small shared living room, an unmistakable tension in his posture. As I stepped inside, the look on his face was serious, more somber than I had seen in days. "Hey, you're home early," I said, trying to sound cheerful. Brandon just nodded, his eyes following me as I dropped my bag and took off my coat. "We need to talk about this project night of yours," he began, his voice steady but with an edge that immediately put me on guard. "I don't understand why you need to spend a whole night working on this with your friends. Doesn't seem like it's just about the project." His words stung, more so because they echoed a deeper distrust that seemed to have been growing between us. "It's just a project, Brandon. It's important for my course, and you know how these things go. We all push at the end to get everything perfect," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. Brandon crossed his arms, his brow furrowing slightly. "It's always about the project, isn't it? Or something else? I feel like you're slipping away," Doing all these things without me. And tonight, it just feels like you don't want me around. I sighed, feeling the weight of his words and the widening gap they represented. This isn't about not wanting you around, Brandon. This is about me needing to do this for my degree. For me. I thought you understood that. He looked away, the lines of his face hardening. I do. It's just hard sometimes. I miss how it used to be with us. There was a sadness in his voice that pulled at me, a reminder of simpler times when our biggest concerns revolved around which movie to watch or what dessert to share on a Saturday night. Now, standing in the dim light of our living room, those days felt like distant echoes overshadowed by the growing complexities of our relationship. I miss that too, I admitted softly, the distance between us feeling more profound in the silence that followed. Dinner ended with an uneasy truce, the issue temporarily set aside but the tension lingering like a stubborn fog. As I grabbed my things to head out, Brandon's voice stopped me at the door. Be safe, okay? He said, a trace of the old warmth in his voice that made my heart ache for what we were struggling to hold on to. I will. I promise, I responded, offering him a small hopeful smile before stepping out into the cool evening air. The night's possibilities stretched out before me like the sprawling campus pathways. The excitement for the project was still there, but now it was tinged with a poignant mixture of concern and longing for the relationship I was still learning to navigate. The night of the project was set to be intense, a blend of creativity and chaos as we worked against the clock. My friends and I had booked a study room in the university's main library, a space often reserved for late-night cram sessions and collaborative projects. As I arrived around 8 p.m., the familiar sense of excitement and nervous energy filled the air, palpable among the scattered laptops, strewn papers, and 3D materials that covered the tables. The first few hours flew by as we dove into our tasks. Anna, a meticulous planner, coordinated our efforts, ensuring everyone stayed on track with their assigned elements. John, ever the perfectionist, was immersed in adjusting the lighting on our 3D models, creating the perfect shadows that made our shapes seem almost lifelike. My role was to integrate the background graphics I had designed, ensuring they complemented rather than overwhelmed the models. At 10 p.m. I sent a quick message to Brandon. In full swing here. Hope your evening is relaxing. The immediate response I hoped for didn't come, and I pushed the slight worry away, redirecting my focus to the vibrant discussion on color schemes and textures swirling around me. Midnight approached, and we took a brief coffee break. The library's 24-hour cafe was buzzing with other students similarly burning the midnight oil, and the air was thick with the aroma of espresso and the low hum of hushed conversations. I checked my phone again, noting the absence of any message from Brandon. A ripple of concern stirred within me, but I was quickly pulled back into the lively banter of my friends, discussing the latest episode of a popular design reality show. By 2 a.m. the project was shaping up, but the fatigue was setting in. We powered through with energy drinks and the collective adrenaline that comes from nearing the finish line. I sent another message to Brandon, a bit more detailed this time. Still working hard. Miss you. The read receipt popped up almost immediately, but there was no reply. The silence gnawed at me, making the coffee seem a bit more bitter. As 4 a.m. rolled around, we were in the final stretch, adding the last touches to our project. The room was quieter now, the earlier excitement giving way to focused concentration and the occasional yawn. I sent one last update to Brandon, half hoping he'd respond with words of encouragement or at least acknowledge my efforts. Almost done here. Can't wait for you to see the final product. Love you. The lack of response this time felt heavier, more loaded. I stared at the screen for a moment longer than necessary, the glow highlighting the worry lines that had formed between my brows. Finally, around 5:30 a.m., we wrapped up. Our project, a visually stunning presentation of geometric and organic shapes, stood as a testament to our hard work and collaborative spirit. There was a collective sigh of relief mixed with pride as we packed up our things. Despite the successful conclusion, my heart wasn't fully in the celebration. The unanswered messages from Brandon cast a shadow over my mood. I arrived home just as the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The apartment was silent, Brandon's side of the bed untouched, indicating he hadn't slept. On the kitchen counter, I found a note from him. Went out to clear my head. We'll talk when I get back. The terse note was unlike his usual thoughtful messages and did little to ease the knot of anxiety that had tightened in my stomach over the course of the night. The words, so stark and devoid of his usual warmth, felt like a cold draft through the room. It was not like him to leave such a terse message. Sitting at the edge of our bed, I felt the weight of the night's efforts on my shoulders and the heavier burden of an unresolved conflict waiting in the wings. The joy of our project's completion was tinged with a sadness that felt all too familiar lately. A reminder of how distant Brandon and I had become in such a short span of time. As I awaited his return, the excitement of the night faded into the background, overshadowed by the uncertainty of the conversation that awaited us. Brandon returned home late in the noon, the sound of the front door closing a signal that a confrontation was imminent. I could hear the muffled sounds of his movements as he hung up his coat and placed his keys in the dish by the entrance, each noise echoing slightly in the tense silence of our apartment. The atmosphere was charged, heavy with the anticipation of the difficult conversation that lay ahead. He found me in the living room, where I had been staring out the window at the cityscape, lost in thought and dreading his return. As he entered, his expression was unreadable, a mask that hid whatever emotions he had stewed in during his hours away. He paused at the doorway, his posture rigid, and then slowly approached where I sat. "So, you were out all night for a project?" His tone was skeptical, laced with a bitterness that made me wince. The question felt like an accusation, a prelude to an argument I wasn't ready to have but knew was unavoidable. "Yes, Brandon, it was for my final project. You know how important this is for my grade," I responded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fatigue and emotional strain. I didn't want to be out so late either, but we had to get everything finished. It's not something I can just put off. Brandon scoffed, shaking his head as he paced a few steps before turning to face me again. "All night, though? Seems like a bit much for just a project. You could have done some of it at home, couldn't you? Why did it have to be an all-nighter?" His doubt stung, and I could feel the defensive walls building up inside me. It wasn't just me, the whole group was there. We needed to work together to get it all done. It's not something I can control. Everyone was counting on each other. He continued to look unconvinced, his arms folded across his chest as he leaned back slightly against the wall. "It just doesn't sit right with me, you being out like that and not even a call to check in. How am I supposed to trust that?" The room seemed smaller with each word, the air between us thick with unsaid things and pent-up frustrations. I was so tired from this, so exhausted from the project and the sleepless night. "I'm telling you the truth, Brandon. I'm too busy to call. But I've texted a lot but you haven't replied." Brandon's gaze hardened, and he let out a long sigh, a sound of frustration and disbelief mixed together. "I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Something about this doesn't add up." The conversation spiraled from there, with each of us rehashing old grievances and misunderstandings, our voices rising and falling in a familiar dance of conflict. Despite my attempts to explain the necessity of the night out, Brandon remained skeptical, his trust seemingly eroded by the incident. As the discussion wore on, I felt a profound exhaustion wash over me, not just from the lack of sleep but from the constant battle to justify my actions and intentions. It was draining, this feeling of having to defend my commitment to both my education and our relationship, and as the afternoon light began to fade, so too did my resolve to keep arguing. Finally, I stood up, a gesture that paused our heated exchange. "I need some rest, Brandon," I said quietly, the fight gone from my voice. "I'm sorry you feel this way, but I've told you the truth. I hope you can believe me." Without waiting for his response, I turned and headed towards our bedroom, leaving Brandon in the living room, surrounded by the silence that quickly filled the space I had vacated. The unresolved tensions remained, a silent specter in our home, as I closed the bedroom door behind me, seeking a refuge from the turmoil and a few hours of much-needed sleep. As the gentle colors of the morning light pierced the darkness, I looked forward to a peaceful morning to relax after the strenuous project session. However, the sudden ringing of my phone shattered the quiet of our apartment, catching me off guard. It was Brandon. Considering the time and the tense messages we had exchanged earlier, I prepared myself for a challenging conversation, but I was still utterly unprepared for the events that were about to unfold. As the soft hues of dawn broke through the night, I anticipated a quiet morning to unwind after the intense project session. However, my phone's sharp ring cut through the stillness of our apartment, startling me. It was Brandon. Given the hour and the strained messages from earlier, I braced myself for a difficult conversation, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. "Hello?" My voice was groggy, tinged with sleep and anxiety. The sounds that met my ears were not words but moans, distinct, unmistakable sounds of intimacy. My mind raced as I tried to process the audio assault. Confusion gave way to a horrifying realization as Brandon's voice came through the line, breathy and cruel. "I wanted you to hear what you've been missing," he said, a hard edge to his whispered words. The background noise didn't subside. It was clear he was not alone. The shock hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My hand trembled as I held the phone, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. How could the man I loved subject me to such a deliberate act of humiliation and spite? There was a pause, a soft shuffle, then Brandon's voice again, colder this time. "Because maybe now you'll understand how it feels to be unwanted," he said, before the line went dead. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor. I stood frozen, the echo of his words reverberating in my mind, each syllable a shard of glass in my heart. The pain was sharp and deep, a betrayal that cut to the core of my being. Tears spilled over, hot and unchecked, as I sank to the floor. The room spun around me, a whirl of dark thoughts and unanswered questions. Who was the woman he was with? But more than anything, why would he choose such a devastating way to express his pain? In my shock, I called Anna immediately. She came to my apartment and rushed into the room. She was by my side, her hands gently lifting my chin to meet her worried gaze. What happened? Oh my God, are you okay? Her voice was laced with concern, her eyes searching mine for an explanation. I shook my head, the words catching in my throat. Through sobs, I recounted the phone call, each word punctuated by a fresh wave of tears. Anna listened in silence, her arm wrapping around my shoulders in a comforting embrace. This isn't just about tonight, is it? She murmured after I had finished, her voice soft but steady. There's more going on here, more pain than just this moment. She was right. The incident wasn't an isolated one but a climax of ongoing tensions and unspoken grievances that had been building between Brandon and me. It was the breaking point of something that had been fracturing slowly, painfully, over time. Anna stayed with me as dawn turned to day, offering silent support as I processed the initial shock, and began to consider the implications of what had happened. The reality of the situation was harsh. Not only had Brandon violated our trust in the most intimate way, but he had also used his actions as a weapon, a way to hurt me as deeply as he felt hurt. We need to talk about this, not just you and me, but you and him, Anna finally said, her tone firm. This can't be brushed under the rug, it's too big, too painful. She was right. As much as I dreaded the confrontation, I knew it was necessary. The foundation of our relationship had been shaken, perhaps irrevocably, and it was clear that things could not continue as they had been. With Anna's encouragement, I found the strength to call Brandon later that day. My voice was steadier than I felt, bolstered by the conviction that I deserved better than the cruelty he had shown. Brandon. We need to talk, I started, my words clear despite the tremor of emotion that underlaid them. What you did this morning was beyond hurtful. It was destructive. There was a heavy silence on the other end before Brandon responded. His voice was subdued, lacking the harshness of earlier. I know, he admitted, and for a moment, I thought I heard a hint of regret from him. I was angry, hurt. I had no idea how else to show, so I did that. Brandon, hurting me like that, making me listen while you were with someone else. That's not a way to solve anything. It's just causing more pain, I continued, my voice firm but shaking with the weight of my emotions. I know, he repeated, his voice low. I wasn't thinking, I just felt so disconnected from you, and I don't know what I thought. I'm sorry, truly. His apology was a start, but the road to healing seemed long and fraught with potential setbacks. The trust between us had been deeply damaged, and I was unsure if it could ever fully be restored. After the phone call with Brandon, I retreated to the safety of our bedroom. The four walls felt like a sanctuary from the chaos and emotional turmoil that had erupted in our living room. Lying on our bed, I couldn't shake off the deep-seated sadness that clung to me, nor the images of Brandon's face, twisted with accusation and mistrust. My mind spun in circles, reflecting on the spiraling decline of our relationship. It was a cycle, tension, and misunderstanding that seemed to repeat itself with increasing intensity. I thought back to the early days with Brandon, when each moment together was filled with laughter and spontaneity. Those memories now seemed like echoes of a distant past, a stark contrast to our current reality where smiles were rare and silences were loaded with unsaid grievances. It wasn't just the lack of trust or the painful confrontation that morning. It was the realization that I no longer recognized the man I had fallen in love with. He had become a stranger, one who could willingly inflict pain with such calculated indifference. As I lay there, a mix of exhaustion and despair washing over me, my phone buzzed with incoming messages. Reluctantly, I reached over to check it, finding texts from Anna and a missed call from my sister Leah. I dialed Leah back, needing the familiar comfort of her voice. Hey Leah, I began, my voice cracking slightly. Hey, what's wrong? I could sense something was off from your text, she responded, her tone immediately shifting to one of concern. I recounted the morning's events, the call from Brandon, and the painful words exchanged. Leah listened silently, only interjecting to ask clarifying questions. When I finished, there was a heavy pause. That's just cruel, you know? It's not like you to tolerate this kind of behavior, not from anyone. Leah finally said. Her words, firm and straightforward, mirrored my own thoughts. It was a reflection of how far I had strayed from the person I used to be, someone who valued self-respect and mutual understanding above all in a relationship. Yeah, I know. I don't even know who he was anymore, I admitted, feeling the weight of my own words. I can't keep going like this. It's draining me, Leah. It's not healthy. You deserve so much better, Leah replied, her voice soft yet insistent. You need to think about what you really want moving forward, not just for the sake of the relationship, but for yourself. Her words sparked something within me, a flicker of determination amidst the confusion. It was a call to reclaim the parts of myself that I had neglected in my attempts to salvage our faltering relationship. I needed to reflect on what I truly wanted, not just drift along in the current of Brandon's moods and accusations. Later that day, I met with Anna for coffee. As always, she was a grounding presence, someone who could always cut through the noise and help me see things more clearly. As I sipped my coffee, Anna laid it out plainly. Everyone sees it, you know. You're not yourself anymore. You're always tense, always worrying about how to navigate around Brandon's feelings. When's the last time you did something just for yourself? Something that made you happy? Her question hung in the air, stark and challenging. I didn't have an answer, and that in itself was telling. He's changed, Anna. Or maybe I'm just seeing the side of him he's hidden all this time, I said, the realization bitter. Maybe, Anna agreed, her brow furrowed in thought. But more importantly, what are you going to do about it? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? The thought of continuing in a relationship where I felt so undervalued, so misunderstood, was unbearable. Yet the thought of ending things, of stepping into the unknown after all we had shared, was daunting. Over the next few days, I took time to myself, reflecting on my values, my needs, and my future. I thought about the kind of love I wanted. The kind that was nurturing, respectful, and joyful. It was clear that what Brandon and I had now was far from those ideals. The love had been overshadowed by resentment and pain, a far cry from the partnership I envisioned. I realized that moving forward alone was a better path than staying in a relationship that had lost its way. It wasn't just about finding happiness but about preserving my self-respect and rediscovering the strength I had before the relationship consumed me. With a heavy heart but a clear mind, I decided it was time to end the relationship with Brandon. I needed to express my decision, not out of spite or anger, but from a place of honesty and self-respect. I hoped that he would release me, that he could see the necessity of the choice I was making. The decision to end our relationship was not easy, but it was necessary. It was a step towards healing, towards reclaiming the joy and peace that had once defined my life. As I prepared to have that final conversation with Brandon, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for all that we had lost, and relief that I was finally taking a step towards a future where I could be myself again, free from the shadows that our love had become. With Brandon, the conclusion was just as challenging as I had expected. But beneath all the pain, there was a resolve that persisted. I was clear in expressing my demands and the sadness of a relationship that had deviated too much from happiness and respect for one another. As he listened, Brandon's expressions were a mixture of resignation and quiet recognition. Ultimately, he comprehended and acknowledged my choice, even though it was evident he was upset and regretful. In the weeks that followed, the immediate sense of relief I felt was tinged with moments of profound loneliness. Our shared apartment, once alive with shared dreams, now echoed with the quietness of solitude. I spent long evenings reflecting on what had gone wrong, turning over the memories, both sweet and bitter. This introspection, though painful, was a necessary part of my healing process. Gradually, the sharpness of recent wounds gave way to a more profound understanding of myself and my boundaries. I began to reconnect with old friends, and my family. Relationships that had been somewhat neglected, became sources of comfort and joy. Their support was instrumental in rebuilding the sense of self that had been eroded in my efforts to save a failing relationship. The knowledge I gained from this period of my life was priceless but difficult to get. I came to understand the value of being honest and open with myself as well as with a partner. I realized the danger of compromising too much and losing oneself in the attempt to keep others happy. I made a self-promise to put emotional fulfillment and respect for the other person before my dread of being alone in a relationship. As I move forward, the scars from this experience remain. But they are a testament to my resilience. They remind me that I have the strength to face difficult truths and make tough decisions, that I deserve to be loved fully and without reservation. The journey of reclaiming the joy and peace I once knew is ongoing, but now I walk it with a clearer vision of who I am, and what I truly value in life and love. I appreciate everyone listening to and reading my story. I have removed it from the platforms where I published it since I believe the details of what he did with me should not reflect poorly on my accounts. The only page I want to share a tale on is this one. Please leave a comment after hearing the story so I know what everyone thinks. I'll probably read it several times over. I want to thank you again for bearing with me as I confessed. My boyfriend asked me to sleep on the floor, showing his selfishness. I'm questioning his love and unsure about our future. I never imagined that a single decision could unravel so much of my life. At 24, I thought I had everything figured out when I moved in with my boyfriend, Mark. He's 35, mature, stable, and seemed like the perfect partner when we met through mutual friends 2.5 years ago. Our relationship started off strong, with mutual respect and love. I was enchanted by his wisdom, his calm demeanor, and how he seemed to have his life together, something I aspired to achieve myself. 5 months ago, I packed my belongings and left behind my small cozy apartment to move into his. It felt like the natural next step for us, a testament to our growing commitment. His apartment was significantly larger, situated in a quiet neighborhood with everything we needed within walking distance. It had an air of stability and permanence, a stark contrast to my transient lifestyle. At first, living together was blissful. We spent our evenings cooking together, watching our favorite shows, and planning our future. But things took a turn when Mark started his new job 3 months ago, a job that required him to work overnight shifts. I had no idea how much this change would impact our relationship, or my own sense of comfort and well-being. Mark's job means he comes home anywhere between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., exhausted and in desperate need of rest. To ensure he gets the sleep he needs, he asked me to leave our bedroom when he comes in. At first I tried to be understanding. I knew his job was demanding and that he needed his sleep. But as days turned into weeks, the sacrifice began to wear on me. Our bedroom is perfect for sleeping. Dark, quiet, and cool, thanks to the blackout curtains that block out the morning sun. But when I'm banished to the living room, it's a different story. The brightness of the early morning light floods the space, making it nearly impossible to sleep. The couch, which is more of a love seat, is too small and uncomfortable, and the floor is too hard on my body. We do have an air mattress, but with our playful cat, it's just a matter of time before it gets punctured. Despite my discomfort, Mark insists that I'm being selfish for wanting to stay in the bedroom. He says that my presence makes the room too hot, and my movements disturb his sleep. But what about my sleep? What about my comfort? It feels incredibly unfair that I'm the one making all the sacrifices while he refuses to compromise. We talked about buying a proper couch, but he doesn't want to contribute financially because, in his words, I'm the one who wants it. I'm at my wit's end. I don't know how much longer I can keep sacrificing my sleep and comfort for him. It's not just about the lack of rest. It's about feeling unheard, unappreciated, and undervalued in our own home. How did we get here? And more importantly, how do we move forward from this? The shift to night work for Mark started as a necessary career move, a way to climb the ladder in his new company. But as the weeks rolled on, it became apparent that the night shifts were doing more than just disrupting his sleep. They were disrupting our entire relationship. Mark needs absolute darkness and silence to sleep after his shifts. His body is already out of sync with the natural rhythm of day and night, and even the slightest disturbance can make it impossible for him to rest. I understood that, I really did. But understanding didn't make it any easier when he started asking me to leave our bedroom between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., so he could sleep undisturbed. At first, I complied without question. I wanted to support him, and I thought I could manage a few hours of discomfort. But the reality of it hit hard. Our living room, in stark contrast to our perfectly dark bedroom, is flooded with light in the early morning. We don't have blackout curtains there, and the sunlight pours in relentlessly, making it almost impossible to sleep. Our couch, a small love seat, is not built for comfort, especially not for prolonged periods. It's too short to stretch out on, and there's no way to find a position that doesn't leave me aching and stiff. The floor is out of the question. It's far too hard and unforgiving on my body. We do have an air mattress, but it's more of a liability than a solution. Our cat, curious and playful as ever, has already punctured it once, and it's only a matter of time before it happens again. Every morning, I find myself wrestling with these makeshift sleeping arrangements, trying to catch a few more precious hours of sleep. But it's not just the physical discomfort, it's the growing sense of resentment and frustration. Each morning that I'm forced out of our bedroom feels like another notch on the tally of sacrifices I'm making for Mark's comfort, with no end in sight. The conversations about finding a compromise often end in frustration. We discuss the possibility of buying a new, more comfortable couch, but Mark refuses to contribute to the cost, arguing that it's my desire, not his. He points out that he already pays 70% of the rent and most of the bills, implying that I should be able to afford it on my own. This financial disparity only adds to the tension, making me feel like my concerns are secondary to his needs. I'm left in a state of constant exhaustion, physically and emotionally drained. I dread the early morning hours, knowing that they'll bring another round of discomfort and resentment. I feel trapped, stuck between my desire to support Mark and my need for a reasonable compromise. The arguments about our sleeping arrangements started as whispers in the early morning and quickly escalated into full-blown confrontations. Mark would come home, exhausted and irritable, and the sight of me still in bed seemed to trigger something in him. "You're so selfish," he'd say, his voice thick with fatigue. "I just need a few hours of uninterrupted sleep, and you can't even give me that." His words cut deep, not because of their harshness, but because they felt like a dismissal of my own struggles. I tried explaining my side, how the living room was too bright, the love seat too small, and the air mattress a ticking time bomb with our cat around. But my protests seemed to fall on deaf ears. Mark's need for rest eclipsed everything else. "It's not fair," I'd argue back, my own frustration bubbling over. "Why do I have to sacrifice my sleep for yours? I'm exhausted too. I have to go to work in a few hours just like you." Mark would sigh, rubbing his temples as if trying to ward off a headache. "You don't understand. My job is demanding, and I need proper sleep to function. You can catch up on your rest later, I can't." These discussions often ended with one of us storming out of the room, the tension hanging heavy in the air. The emotional impact was profound. I started to dread his return from work, knowing it would lead to another argument. My resentment grew with each passing day, each morning spent contorted on the love seat or lying wide awake, bathed in the glaring morning light. It wasn't just the physical discomfort that gnawed at me. It was the feeling of being unheard and undervalued. I felt like my needs were being cast aside, my discomfort deemed irrelevant. Mark's unwillingness to compromise only fueled my frustration. How could he not see that this was affecting both of us? One particularly heated argument stands out in my memory. It was a Saturday morning, and I had stayed up late the night before, hoping to sleep in. Mark came home, his face drawn and weary, and immediately asked me to leave the bedroom. When I hesitated, he snapped. "Why are you being so difficult? Just go to the living room. It's not that big of a deal." "Not that big of a deal?" I shot back, my voice rising. "It's easy for you to say that. You're not the one sleeping on a love seat or dealing with the cat poking holes in the air mattress. I'm tired too, Mark. I'm exhausted." "Well, maybe if you contributed more financially, you could afford a better place to sleep," he retorted, his words like a slap in the face. "I'm paying for almost everything here. The least you could do is let me sleep in peace." That comment hit me hard. It wasn't just about the money, but about what it represented. My financial contributions might have been smaller, but they were still significant to me. I felt belittled, as if my efforts and sacrifices meant nothing. The tears stung my eyes as I tried to hold back the sobs. "That's not fair, Mark. I moved in here to be with you, to support you. But I feel like I'm the one making all the sacrifices. You're not even willing to meet me halfway." He softened slightly at my words, but the underlying tension remained. "I'm sorry," he said, though his tone lacked conviction. "I just need sleep, okay? We'll figure something out. Maybe next month, when I have some extra money, we can look into getting a better couch." But next month felt like an eternity away, and the promise was too vague to offer any real comfort. The cycle continued, the arguments becoming more frequent and the emotional distance between us growing wider. I started to avoid him when he came home, slipping out of the bedroom before he arrived to avoid the confrontation. I'd curl up on the love seat, my body aching, and stare at the ceiling, wondering how things had gotten so bad. The resentment festered, turning into a gnawing bitterness that ate away at the love we once shared. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This situation isn't working for either of us. What if we buy a new couch? Something more comfortable that I can sleep on in the mornings?" He looked at me, a mixture of frustration and fatigue etched on his face. "I've already told you, I can't afford to buy a new couch right now. I'm paying for 70% of the rent, the bills, and both our car insurances. My salary only comes once a month, and it's tight." "I understand that," I replied, trying to stay calm. "But I'm struggling too. The love seat is killing my back, and the living room is so bright in the mornings. I can't keep sacrificing my sleep like this. Maybe we can split the cost of the couch? I can chip in half." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't see why I should pay for something I don't need. You're the one who wants the couch, so it makes sense for you to pay for it." His words stung, but I pushed on. "We're a team, Mark. This is about finding a solution that works for both of us. I'm willing to contribute, but I can't afford the entire cost on my own. Can't we figure something out together?" Mark's expression softened slightly, but the concern in his eyes didn't fade. "Look, I get it. You're uncomfortable, and that's not fair to you. But I really don't have the funds for a new couch right now. Maybe next month, when I get paid again, we can look into it. Next month. The phrase felt like a lifeline and a curse all at once. It offered a glimmer of hope but also meant another month of sleepless mornings and mounting resentment. Still, it was something. All right, I said quietly. But we need to make sure it happens. I can't keep doing this, Mark. He nodded, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. I know. We'll figure it out. In the meantime, we tried to make the best of the current situation. Mark suggested I try sleeping with earplugs and an eye mask to block out the light and noise in the living room. It helped a little, but the love seat remained a constant source of discomfort. My body ached from the cramped space, and I found myself waking up several times each morning, unable to find a comfortable position. Mark, for his part, tried to be more considerate. He started coming home a bit quieter, tiptoeing around the apartment to avoid waking me. But the underlying issues remained. The financial strain and our inability to find a real solution loomed over us like a dark cloud. One particularly rough morning, I found myself in tears, curled up on the love seat, my body protesting every movement. I felt trapped, caught between my need for rest and my desire to support Mark. The air mattress remained unusable, as our cat had already managed to puncture it once, and we couldn't risk it happening again. Mark walked in, seeing me in my state, and his face softened with guilt. I'm sorry, he said quietly, sitting beside me. I know this isn't easy for you. We'll get through this, okay? Just a little longer. His words were meant to comfort, but they only highlighted the growing divide between us. How much longer could we keep this up? The temporary solutions felt like band-aids on a gaping wound, failing to address the deeper issues at play. As the days turned into weeks, the promise of next month became a distant echo, and my hope for a resolution faded. The love seat, the arguments, the sleepless mornings, it all felt like an endless cycle with no end in sight. Something had to give. But what? And how much more could our relationship endure before it broke entirely? One evening, after another heated argument with Mark, I poured my heart out to my best friend Jenna. Over a cup of coffee, I explained everything: the sleepless mornings, the cramped love seat, the mounting resentment. Am I being unreasonable? I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. Am I really being selfish? Jenna listened patiently, her brow furrowing in concern. Honestly, it sounds like you're both struggling, she said finally. But it doesn't seem fair for you to be the one making all the sacrifices. Relationships are about compromise, and it doesn't sound like Mark is willing to meet you halfway. Her words were comforting, but I needed more. That night, I posted my story on a popular relationship advice forum, detailing every aspect of our predicament. I poured out my frustrations, my feelings of being undervalued, and my physical and emotional exhaustion. I hit submit and waited, hoping for some insight or guidance. The responses came flooding in. They were varied, with opinions ranging from sympathetic to brutally honest. Some people sided with Mark, emphasizing the importance of his sleep and his financial contributions. Others were more critical of him, pointing out the unfairness of his expectations and his unwillingness to compromise. One comment stood out to me. You deserve to be comfortable too. It's not just about the money, it's about respect and mutual support. If he can't see that, then maybe it's time to reevaluate the relationship. Another suggested practical solutions. Why not look for a second-hand couch, something affordable that you can both chip in for, or consider rearranging the living room to make it more sleep-friendly for you. As I read through the comments, I began to see the situation in a new light. I wasn't being selfish for wanting a comfortable place to sleep. My needs and well-being were just as important as Mark's. The constant discomfort and lack of proper rest were not sustainable, and something had to change. One particularly insightful comment made me realize something crucial. Communication is key. You need to sit down with him and have an honest conversation about how this is affecting you. If he truly cares about you, he'll be willing to find a solution that works for both of you. Buoyed by the support and advice from strangers, I decided to reassess my stance. I wasn't going to let this situation continue to drain me. I needed to be more assertive, to stand up for my own needs and well-being. The next day, armed with the new perspectives I had gained, I approached Mark. I laid out my feelings clearly and calmly, explaining how the current arrangements were affecting me physically and emotionally. I shared some of the practical suggestions from the forum, emphasizing that we needed to find a compromise that worked for both of us. At first, Mark was defensive, but as I persisted, his demeanor softened. He agreed to look into second-hand couches and to consider rearranging the living room to make it more sleep-friendly for me. It wasn't a complete solution, but it was a step in the right direction. The next weekend, we picked up a second-hand couch and rearranged the living room. It wasn't as comfortable as a brand new couch, but it was a significant improvement over the love seat. The makeshift partition helped block out the light, allowing me to get a few more hours of rest each morning. As we worked together to make these changes, I felt a sense of hope returning. Mark's willingness to compromise and find a solution showed that he cared about my well-being. The process wasn't easy, and there were still moments of tension and frustration, but we were making progress. Over the following weeks, the atmosphere in our apartment began to improve. The arguments lessened, and the resentment started to fade. We were learning to communicate better, to listen to each other's needs and find compromises that worked for both of us. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a realistic step towards building a stronger, more supportive relationship. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a while, I felt optimistic about our future together. We were no longer two people at odds, but partners working towards a common goal, creating a home where both of us could feel comfortable, respected, and valued. The biggest takeaway was the critical role of communication. Our initial conflicts had been fueled by a lack of honest, open dialogue. Once we started truly listening to each other and discussing our concerns without immediate defensiveness or dismissal, we were able to find common ground. It was a reminder that relationships are built on mutual respect and the ability to navigate challenges together. As I lay on the new couch, more comfortable than I had been in weeks, I felt a sense of contentment and hope. We had made it through one of the toughest periods in our relationship, and I knew we could face whatever came next, together. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My boyfriend yelled and insulted me in front of his friend after 1 year of cohabitation. How do I move forward? The morning started like any other. The sun came up, and its light sneaked into our apartment, making everything look warm and cozy. I stayed in bed a little longer, enjoying the quiet. Alex, my boyfriend, and I had been living together for a bit more than a year. Alex and I met back in college, and it didn't take long for us to start dating. He was fun, always making me laugh, and really sure of himself, which I liked. But Alex could also get pretty mad sometimes, especially when things didn't go his way. We had argued before, like most couples do, but we always made it right again afterward. Alex was a great guy, but when he got stressed, he could get pretty upset. I knew this about him and tried my best to understand. Today was a big day. Alex's old friend Mark was coming over. Alex had talked about Mark a lot. They have been best friends since they were kids. I was excited to finally meet him. I wanted to make our place feel welcoming for his visit. Our apartment was small but felt just right for us. We had pictures of our trips and fun times hanging up, making it feel like home. I was hoping Mark would feel comfortable here too. I spent the morning getting everything ready. I cooked and cleaned, hoping to make a good impression. But I noticed Alex was acting a bit off. He was quiet and didn't seem like himself. I thought maybe he was just nervous about seeing Mark again after so long. But deep down, I had this feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it, focusing on getting things ready, not knowing that the day was going to bring a lot more than just a friendly visit. It was going to be a day that would really test me and Alex in ways I never expected. Life with Alex before Mark's visit felt mostly smooth, like riding a bike on a flat road. Sure, there were bumps now and then, mostly because Alex could get really heated up over small stuff. But we always found a way to get back to that smooth part of the road after each bump. The day Mark was supposed to come over started weird. The apartment felt too quiet, like when you're in a room where you're supposed to be quiet, and you can hear every little sound. Alex was quiet too, not his usual loud, cheerful self. I figured he was just nervous or maybe excited to see Mark. They hadn't hung out in so long because Mark lived far away. Alex had told me a lot about Mark. They did everything together when they were younger. From what Alex said, I pictured Mark as a fun guy, always ready for an adventure. Alex was excited about showing him our place, about having him meet me, and about catching up on old times. The morning Mark arrived, I tried to make everything perfect. I cleaned the house again, even though it was already clean. I made snacks and arranged them nicely on plates. I wanted Mark to feel welcome. But all morning, Alex was off. He was there but not really there. He was like a balloon that had lost some air, not flat on the ground but definitely not flying high. When Mark finally showed up, everything changed for a bit. Alex lit up like someone turned his switch back on. They hugged, laughed, and started talking a mile a minute. Mark was just like I imagined. Tall, always smiling, and full of energy. Seeing Alex happy made me happy too. We spent the day hanging out, talking, and laughing. Well, they did most of the talking. I felt a bit like I was outside looking in. They had so many stories I wasn't a part of, jokes I didn't get. But it was nice seeing Alex so happy. As the day went on though, I started to feel more and more like I was actually outside. Alex and Mark got into some serious talking about old times, and sometimes Alex would look at me like he was checking if I was still there. I tried to join in, but it felt like throwing a pebble into a pond and not seeing any ripples. Then, things started to feel tense. It wasn't anything big, just little things. Alex would snap at me over small stuff, like if I asked if they wanted more to drink. Or he'd make a big deal if I laughed too loud or if I didn't get one of their jokes. It felt like he was picking on me, but in front of Mark I tried to just let it slide off my back. I didn't want to ruin the day. But as the sun started to set, I could feel something big was about to happen. It was like the air before a thunderstorm, all heavy. We were all sitting around, the room getting darker, and that's when it happened. Alex turned on me over something so small, I can't even remember what it was now. But his words were big and sharp. They cut right through me, and I couldn't hold back the tears. I ran to our bedroom, feeling like I was in a bad dream. I lay there on our bed, crying and trying to understand what just happened. Why did Alex get so mad? Why in front of Mark? It felt like everything was broken, and I didn't know if we could fix it. Lying there, I realized that this was more than just a bad day. It was a sign that something wasn't right between me and Alex. We needed to talk, really talk, about everything. But first, I had to get through the night. The night crept in, suffocating me in its heavy silence. I retreated to my sanctuary, the bedroom where my sobs echoed off the cold walls. Curling up on the bed, I sought solace in the darkness, tears streaming down my cheeks and soaking the pillow. How could this be? I screamed silently. Alex, the man I love, the man I share my life with, how could he say such cruel words? The pain of betrayal pierced my heart like a sharp knife. Weak rays of light filtered through the window, casting faint shadows on the photos hanging on the wall, memories of our happy times together. Now, they seemed to mock me, a reminder of a happiness that felt like a distant past. The warmth, the laughter, the gentle hugs. All of it vanished, leaving behind an endless void. The small bedroom, once our safe haven, felt suffocating and alien. Throughout the night, I tossed and turned, my mind racing with thoughts of Alex's words. Why was he so angry? What did I do wrong? The more I thought, the more trapped I felt. Sleep evaded me, leaving me only with haunting questions and a dull ache in my heart. The next morning, I left the bedroom. The apartment was silent. Alex wasn't there. He must have left early, maybe to avoid talking about what happened. The quiet felt like a relief and a weight all at once. I made myself some tea, the warm mug in my hands a small comfort. I sat at our little kitchen table, staring out the window, lost in thought. I replayed the incident over and over in my head, trying to make sense of it. How did we get here? How did a simple day turn into a night that felt like it might change everything? The questions kept coming, but the answers were nowhere to be found. As the day went on, I kept busy, cleaning up the apartment, trying to clear away the reminders of last night. But it was more than just the physical mess. There was an emotional mess to deal with too. I knew we couldn't just ignore what happened. We needed to talk, really talk, about everything. But I was scared. Scared of what Alex might say, scared of hearing that he didn't love me anymore, scared of finding out that our relationship was broken beyond repair. When Alex finally came home, it was late. The tension between us was like a wall, thick and unbreakable. We barely looked at each other. Dinner was a silent affair, both of us lost in our own thoughts. The silence was loud, filled with all the things we weren't saying. After dinner, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I needed to know where we stood. Alex, we need to talk. He looked up, his eyes dry. What do you want to talk about? About last night, I said, my voice trembling. Why did you say those things to me? What did I do to disappoint you? Alex avoided my gaze. You kept interrupting our conversation. You weren't really interested in what Mark was saying. That's not true, I retorted. I was trying to participate, but you made me feel like I didn't belong. Tears welled up in my eyes again. Seeing this, Alex sighed. He fumbled. I know I behaved terribly. There's no excuse for the way I treated you. Finally, he acknowledged his mistake. A small glimmer of hope flickered in my heart. But why? I asked. Why were you so angry? There was a long pause. Finally Alex spoke. I was just stressed out about work. And Mark's visit made things more complicated. Alex's confession took me aback. Stress? I repeated. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to worry you, he replied softly. A mix of sadness and disappointment washed over me. We had been living together for over a year, and yet Alex didn't feel comfortable sharing his problems with me. A sad and disappointed feeling filled me up, like a bad drink that left a yucky taste. We laughed so hard our sides hurt, cried on each other's shoulders during tough times, and built a future together, piece by piece. But here, at the kitchen table, the place where we'd had so many meals and shared secrets, there was a stranger sitting across from me. It hit me like someone punched me. Alex, the man I thought I knew, the one I told all my deepest secrets to, kept his troubles hidden away, like a locked box I couldn't open. The key wasn't trust, because we trusted each other after all we'd been through. No, it was something else that was missing. He didn't feel okay being open with me, letting down his guard and showing me the worries that bothered him. Did he think I wouldn't understand? Did he doubt I could be his rock, his best friend, the one person who would always be there? That thought hurt even more. Here we were, supposed to be a team, facing the world together, but he was fighting his battles all alone. This wasn't just about the fight, it was about the whole thing we had together. We were supposed to be partners, not roommates who lived together comfortably but didn't really talk. The silence now felt loud, a constant reminder of the space that had grown between us. Tears welled up in my eyes, making it hard to see Alex across the table. This couldn't be the end. Taking a deep breath, I scooted my chair back a little. Alex, I started, my voice shaky but strong. We need to talk more. Not just about the fight, but about everything. I want to know what's going on with you. And I want you to know you're not alone in this. You don't have to carry this all by yourself. Looking back on everything that happened, it feels like we've walked through a storm and come out on the other side, a bit worn but also stronger. That night, when Alex's words felt like knives and my tears wouldn't stop, I couldn't see a way forward. But now, I see it as a turning point, a harsh lesson that taught us so much about love, about each other, and about ourselves. I learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's also about standing together when the sky falls down, about holding hands in the dark, and finding our way back to each other. It's about speaking up when we're hurt and listening, really listening, when the other person is hurting too. We've learned to communicate better, to not let small things build up into big problems. We've learned that it's okay to be vulnerable, to show our true selves, because that's when we truly connect and heal. This experience has shown me the depth of our love. It's not fragile, but resilient, capable of weathering storms and emerging stronger. I'm grateful for Alex, for his willingness to change and grow with me. Our journey hasn't been easy, but it's ours, and I wouldn't change it. As we move forward, I carry with me the lessons of that night. They remind me of what we've overcome and what we can achieve together. Our love is a living, breathing thing that grows and changes with us, and I'm excited to see where it takes us next. Will he continue to hold my hand? Only time would tell. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My wife has proposed a threesome with another girl. Would I be able to live with myself if I sacrificed my own values for the sake of keeping her by my side? Or would I refuse it? My name is Ash and I'm a 31-year-old man living in the bustling city. For the past 8 years I've been married to the love of my life, my wife, who is just a year older than me at 32. Our journey together has been filled with both highs and lows, but through it all, we've remained committed to each other, building a life filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. When I first met my wife, let's call her Sarah, it felt like destiny had brought us together. We shared a deep connection from the very beginning, and as our relationship blossomed, I knew she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We got married after a few years of dating, surrounded by our friends and family, and embarked on the journey of marriage with excitement and anticipation. Our marriage has been a journey of growth and exploration, as we've navigated the challenges and joys of life together. We've supported each other through career changes, family struggles, and personal triumphs, always standing by each other's side no matter what. However, recently our relationship took an unexpected turn when Sarah proposed the idea of exploring our sexuality in a new way. It was a proposal that caught me off guard, to say the least. Sarah expressed her desire to introduce a third party into our bedroom, specifically another woman named Claire who had expressed interest in joining us. At first I was stunned by Sarah's proposition. It was something we had never discussed before, and the idea of bringing someone else into our intimate space felt daunting and unfamiliar. But as Sarah explained her thoughts and desires, I could see the excitement and anticipation in her eyes, and I knew she was serious about wanting to explore this new aspect of our relationship. Despite my initial reservations, I couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity and intrigue. The idea of adding a new dimension to our sex life was both exciting and terrifying, and I found myself torn between my desire to please Sarah and my fears of the unknown. The conversation with Sarah about her proposition of a threesome was a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts swirling inside my head. Sitting across from her at our kitchen table, I couldn't help but feel a mix of surprise, curiosity, and apprehension as we delved into this uncharted territory. It all started one evening when Sarah broached the subject over dinner. As we savored our meal, she casually mentioned that she had been thinking about spicing up our sex life by inviting another woman to join us. At first I thought she was joking, but the earnest look in her eyes told me she was serious. I remember feeling a wave of shock wash over me as I processed her words. This was not a conversation I ever expected to have with my wife, and I struggled to wrap my head around the idea of sharing her with someone else. But as Sarah began to explain her perspective, I could see the excitement and anticipation bubbling within her. She spoke about her desire to explore her bisexual interests and her curiosity about adding a new dynamic to our relationship. She assured me that it was not about replacing me or seeking a polyamorous arrangement, but rather about enhancing our connection and experiencing something new together. Despite her reassurances, I couldn't shake the nagging doubts and concerns that lingered in the back of my mind. I worried about the potential complications and risks involved in inviting a third party into our intimate space. Would it change the dynamic between Sarah and me? Could it lead to jealousy or resentment down the line? Sarah sensed my hesitation and gently encouraged me to express my thoughts and feelings openly. She listened attentively as I voiced my concerns, patiently addressing each one with empathy and understanding. She reassured me that our relationship was strong enough to withstand any challenges that may arise and that she valued my happiness and comfort above all else. Deep down, I struggled to trust her intentions and questioned the true motives behind her proposal. In a moment of frustration and insecurity, I reacted harshly, my words laced with doubt and skepticism. I couldn't understand why she would want to jeopardize our marriage by introducing such a risky and potentially destructive element into our relationship. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios and I found myself lashing out in fear and anger. As the tension between us reached a boiling point, I made it clear that I was not comfortable with the idea of a threesome and that I would not entertain the notion any further. I couldn't bear the thought of sharing Sarah with another woman, and the mere suggestion of it filled me with a sense of betrayal and hurt. My own fears and insecurities clouded my judgment, leaving me unable to see beyond the immediate threat I perceived to our marriage. I recoiled from her touch, shutting her out as I retreated into my own turmoil. As the weight of my words hung heavy in the air, I realized the depth of the damage I had caused. My harsh reaction had pushed Sarah further away, widening the rift between us and deepening the divide in our marriage. As the conversation with Sarah reached its peak, with a tone that brooked no argument, she delivered chilling finality. Accept her proposal for a threesome, or risk losing her altogether. My heart sank as her words echoed in my mind, the weight of her ultimatum pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. The thought of losing her, of watching our relationship crumble before my eyes, filled me with a sense of overwhelming dread. With a heavy heart I listened as Sarah outlined her terms. She offered me a mere 2 weeks to consider her proposal, a scant amount of time to grapple with the gravity of the decision before me. The pressure of her deadline bore down on me, leaving me feeling suffocated and overwhelmed. I found myself torn between my love for Sarah and my own moral convictions. The prospect of losing her was almost too much to bear, yet I couldn't bring myself to betray my own principles in order to keep her by my side. The choice before me felt impossible, each option laden with its own set of consequences and repercussions. As the deadline loomed closer, I found myself grappling with a myriad of conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was my deep love for Sarah, a bond that had weathered its fair share of storms over the years. On the other hand, there was my own sense of self-respect, my moral compass guiding me towards what I believed was right. The weight of the decision ahead of me felt like a heavy burden, one that I alone bore the responsibility of carrying. Would I be able to live with myself if I sacrificed my own values for the sake of keeping Sarah by my side? Or would I regret it for the rest of my days, haunted by the knowledge that I had betrayed my own principles? Update. Recently, there's been a significant gap between us, both emotionally and physically. It feels like we're miles apart, like there's this huge divide separating us from the closeness and intimacy we once had. I can feel the change most when it comes to our physical connection. We used to have this easy way of touching each other, of being close without even thinking about it. But now it's like there's this tension between us that wasn't there before. I find myself pulling away from my wife's touch, almost like I'm afraid of it. It's a strange feeling, one that I can't quite shake off. It's like her presence itself has become this uncomfortable weight, making it hard for us to connect like we used to. As an objective observer, I would like to offer some advice based on the situation described. 1. Know to Claire. While the notion of engaging in a threesome with someone you already trust, such as a friend, might seem appealing initially, it's essential to recognize the potential risks involved. Trusting someone in the context of a platonic relationship doesn't necessarily translate to trust in a sexual encounter. Introducing a friend into the dynamic can complicate existing relationships and lead to unforeseen emotional entanglements. The lines between friendship and sexual intimacy can become blurred, causing confusion and conflict within the relationships involved. Therefore, it's advisable for Ash to steer clear of involving Claire or any other close acquaintances in such arrangements to avoid potential fallout and protect the integrity of his marriage. 2. Saying no. Despite the discomfort associated with rejecting his wife's proposition, sometimes saying no is the wisest course of action. It's crucial for Ash to assert his boundaries firmly while maintaining open communication with his wife. By expressing his reservations and concerns, Ash can demonstrate his commitment to honesty and transparency in their relationship. How his wife reacts to his refusal can provide valuable insights into her respect for his boundaries and her willingness to prioritize their mutual well-being over her desires. It's essential for Ash to ensure that his refusal doesn't lead to resentment or distance between them, fostering an environment of understanding and respect, even in the face of difficult decisions. 3. Establish boundaries. Before considering any further steps, it's imperative for Ash and his wife to establish clear and unequivocal boundaries for any potential threesome. They must engage in open and honest discussions to outline their expectations, desires, and limitations regarding the proposed arrangement. Agreeing that any involvement with a third party would be a one-time occurrence unless both parties explicitly consent to future encounters is crucial to avoiding misunderstandings and conflicts. Establishing clear boundaries up front can help mitigate the risk of emotional turmoil and ensure that both partners feel respected and valued in the decision-making process. It's essential for Ash and his wife to approach these discussions with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to prioritizing their relationship's stability and well-being above all else. 4. Consider the risks. While the prospect of exploring sexual fantasies and desires may be enticing, it's essential for Ash to consider the potential risks and consequences associated with engaging in a threesome. Threesomes can introduce a myriad of complexities and challenges into a relationship, including jealousy, insecurity, and emotional distress. Ash should reflect on whether the potential rewards of such an encounter outweigh the potential risks to their marriage and emotional well-being. Trusting his instincts and prioritizing open communication with his wife can help Ash navigate this decision with clarity and confidence. Ultimately, it's vital for Ash to make a choice that aligns with his values, priorities, and long-term goals for their relationship, ensuring that their bond remains strong and resilient in the face of temptation and uncertainty. Finally, I want to extend my sincerest thanks to all of you who have taken the time to share your stories on Reddit. Please continue to journey with us, share your experiences, and together, let's create memorable moments.